People in Gaza have preserved traditional crafts for generations, despite a years-long blockade that has largely cut them off from the world. And entrepreneurs have found creative ways to keep their businesses going, like turning olive waste into energy bricks in a place where fuel is in short supply, and launching entire businesses using materials recovered from landfills. But their resilience is now facing the most destructive war in generations. Hamas, the ruling party in Gaza, killed 1,400 people in Israel in early October and took more than 240 hostages. In response, Israel launched major strikes that have killed more than 10,000 Palestinians and destroyed over a quarter of the buildings here.
We build it stone by stone, brick by brick.
Yasser Abu Wazna is a Palestinian journalist who has filmed dozens of stories for Insider since 2019. He lost his home in this latest war.
I literally lose my words.
We look back at the entrepreneurs he has profiled who managed to keep their businesses standing for decades. This pottery factory has survived 6 decades of war and conflict. At one point, there were nearly 40 workshops like this one in the Gaza Strip. But now, only a handful are left.
نشتغل بالصرفة انتهى وهذا كلام لا يعقل ليش هيك ليش اللي بصير احنا علينا ليش اللي بصير علينا احنا هيك ليش.
But owner Sabri Atallah says Israeli airstrikes in May were the worst he's ever lived through.
احنا متوقعين ان كنا كل يوم انه ننقص او نقتل او بسبب ايش؟ بسبب الحرب اللي احنا فيه.
But the Atallah family is determined to save the art they have practiced for 3 generations. We went to Gaza to see how this business is still standing. The dry soil they use as a base comes from the eastern parts of Gaza. It turns into mud in the washtub where workers mix it with water. Then they filter it to get rid of impurities like small rocks. It takes about 2 days of drying for the soup of water and mud to turn into clay.
بنجيبها بنحطها على ماكينه تسمى العجانه هي العجانه هي اللي شفتها.
The machine smooths and molds the clay into chunks. The Atallah family runs 2 factories next to each other. Sabri's shop is the largest and has been around since the 1960s. Sabri's nephew Mustafa Muhammad Atallah learned the craft when he was 8 years old. Today, he helps his father run their own shop next to Sabri's.
بدينا بصنعة الفخار وراثة أبا عن جدة وتراث بدنا نضلنا نحافظ عليها تراث فلسطيني إنه ما ينقرضش.
He's making a clay pot called kedra. It's used to cook a Palestinian dish of meat and rice, also called kedra, that's popular during Ramadan and holidays like Eid al-Adha. And that's the busiest time for the business. But this Ramadan was different. Gaza and neighboring Israel traded deadly rocket fire and devastating airstrikes in early May. Hundreds of people were killed in Gaza and 13 in Israel. The latest chapter in a long history of occupation and war.
يشوف اخوه مستشهد، يشوف ابن عمه، يشوف جاره، يشوف قريبه، يشوف حدا مستشهد قدامه ينقتل قدامه.
Sabri was forced to close up shop. While shelling was still going on outside, Sabri's sons came to salvage the inventory they'd prepared to sell during Ramadan.
الأشياء الموجودة عندنا هنا أشياء أصلاً كانت مشغولة من قبل الحرب يعني في أواخر شهر رمضان فما بقدر أسيبها أنا تخرب فلهيك بكملها بس يعني مش إن أنا بنتج الشغلات عشان أنظر أبيع يعني ما في أصلاً سوق للبيع. الشوارع فاضية ما في حتى السير على الأقدام للمواطنين لأنه الخوف والذعر في لدى المواطنين هو أصوات القصف.
By the end of the 11-day war, more than 450 buildings were damaged or destroyed in an area roughly the size of Detroit.
هلا انت يعني في حرب بين حياه وبين موت، يعني قصف طائرات، دبابات، مدافع، صواريخ، وكيف الانسان في اثناء حرب انه تجي نفس تشتغل.
No one in Sabri's family died this time, but he says he lost a quarter of his inventory because of the vibrations from nearby explosions. He restarted production shortly after the ceasefire.
وقاعد بدك تشده لما يشتغل، زي واحد مرخى وقاعد بتعطيه عيان وقاعد بطيب فيه. والحمد لله.
But the holiday of Eid al-Adha was just 2 months away in July, so Sabri couldn't afford to take a break. His father taught him the craft when he opened the store in the 1960s. Today, Sabri designs the artwork himself.
كمخترع كصاحب محل لازم هو اللي يخترع الشغله ويقول للمعلم اشتغل كذا وكذا، يعني انا بقول للصانع اللي عندي المعلم هذا بقول له اشتغل كذا كذا. فهمت؟ هاي البريق صغير اشتغل فيها، شوف انت كيف بتشغل البريق. العلم كشف، وانا قلت لك انه كشف انه الوضع الماء في داخل الفخار يعيد حيوية الماء إلى طبيعتها الأصلية كما طلعت من بطن الأرض.
Smaller terracotta pots meant for salad are another bestseller during this time. Before the Israeli blockade, Sabri used to sell 300 of these pots every day. Now he can't even sell that in 1 year. Everything changed when Hamas won the election in 2006. Israel and Egypt consider it a terrorist group and put strict rules in place limiting what goods could come in and out of Gaza. Israel says the blockade is necessary for security reasons, but Palestinians say it amounts to collective punishment of everyone in Gaza. Sabri's business plummeted.
بسبب الحصار وبسبب الحروب ما اقدرش اجيب المواد هذه، ما اقدرش اكمل حالي.
In a place where nearly 60% of people live in poverty, traditional handmade ceramicware just can't compete with cheap metal pots and plastic bowls. He's had to let go of all of his employees. Now he keeps things going with just his family. To cut costs, he fires the clay in wood-powered furnaces.
فإذا كان حرقنا في هذه المادة احنا حرقنا يعني بالكهرباء أو في الغاز أو الصرف مكلف علينا، يعني بيقدر يكلفنا مبالغ طاهلة ما بنقدرش نحطه على المستهلك هذه الكمية.
But this ancient technique produces a lot of smoke, and neighbors have been complaining.
كنا منبهين عليهم إنه هذا فيه دخان وفيه فخاخير وفيه بل سكنوا جنبنا. ليش؟ أخذوها بتراب مصاري الأرض عشان جنب الفخورة.
In early 2021, the municipality made it illegal to run the kiln. Still, he's determined not to give up until the next generation of Atallas can take over.
كيف طموح؟ كيف شايف كيف ذهب مستويان. أنا إلي حب هذا في الصناعة هذه صناعة الفخار، يعني كمتوسك بوطني أو بابني أو بشيء غالي علي.
And his nephew Mustafa feels the same way.
علمني إياها أبويا الوالد، علمني إياها وصرت أشتغل فيها، وأنا إن شاء الله بدي أعلمها لأولادي إن شاء الله بإذن الله.
Palestinians in Gaza ring in the olive harvest season as they usually do. A festival filled with traditional folk singing, dancing, and of course, olives. But the harvest success depends as much on a favorable climate as it does on the state of conflict with neighboring Israel. For decades, clashes in Gaza and the West Bank have not only threatened thousands of farmers' trees, but their livelihoods too.
شعور مأساوي، شعور حزين، إنسان بيتعب بيقدم كل ما لديه علشان أو لكل ما عنده عشان هذه الشجرة بلحظة بحوالي 5 دقائق أو أكثر أو أقل بيقلعوها ولكنها كانت موجودة.
Here, olives are a symbol of pride, and a staple of the economy. From olives for food to oil and soap, the industry makes up about 19% of Gaza's agricultural sector. Local entrepreneurs have even come up with a way to transform this green gold into fuel. Mohammed Ahmad Fayed has been farming olives for around 20 years. Like many Palestinians, he inherited trees from his parents and grandparents.
عندما أدخل مثلا شجر أو الأرض التي تغرس بالزيتون تكون يعني مصدر سرور أو مصدر فرح. ليش؟ لأني لما بطلع على الشجرة بعتبرها هي جذوري في الأرض.
Each October, Mohammed and his family spend their days picking from their grove, which has around 80 trees. It's an annual tradition for many Palestinian families in Gaza.
إلنا إحنا بالنسبة لشجرة الزيتون تجمع الناس الأقارب، الناس بتلاقيها عندها بهجة فرحة. ليش؟ لأنه الإنسان لما بيزرع بيحب يجني.
Some of the olives are pressed into oil, others pickled and jarred. Mohammed keeps enough for his family and sells the rest.
هذا الزيت من محصول السنة. يعني شهر مثلا حاصلين في المعصرة وهي.
It's this family's main source of income, along with around 100,000 other Palestinian families who rely on the olive harvest to support them through the year.
هذا الزيتون بنخزنه السنة الجاية وبعد شهرين بناكل منه عادي.
Gaza has around 8,000 acres of olive groves. Mohammed's trees grow just outside of a village called Kuzea, 4 kilometers from the Israeli border. While his groves have been safe, the threat of conflict is ever present.
بدمرها العدو اللي إلي لأنه ما يحبنيش يشوفني مثلا هذه الشجرة بعد الشجرة هي بتمثل له عدو.
This area has been a hot zone for cross-border attacks for over a decade. The Gaza Strip is governed by Hamas, which is considered a terrorist group by Israel and several other countries. Israel closely monitors the border, sometimes clearing land on the Gaza side to counter the threat of rocket attacks or to destroy tunnels used for smuggling. The UN reported that in the years leading up to 2011, over 1,800 acres of olive groves along the Israel-Gaza border had been cleared. In a statement to Insider, Israel Defense Forces said they clear land to prevent hostile terrorist activity, and that this is carried out only up to 100 meters inside the Gaza Strip.
تخرج من السلك الزائل أو الحاجز الزائل والجرافات بيطلعوا أشجار الزيتون ما بعد عن الحدود كيلو ونص و2 كيلو تم تجريفها.
And in 2014, a major offensive by Israel to remove the threat of attacks by militants in Gaza left over 2,000 Palestinians dead. 71 Israelis also died. Farming land and infrastructure were other casualties, costing Gaza's agricultural sector $500 million. Over the years, Mohammed says land near his farm has been targeted too.
التجريف هذا باستمرار يعني بعض الأحيان فيه اللي أنا بعرف زرع أرضه مرتين و3.
Israeli land has also been subjected to considerable damage. The IDF says that in the past few years, incendiary balloons and kites launched by militants in Gaza have ignited fires that burned more than 40,000 acres of Israeli soil. About 70 miles east of the Gaza Strip is the West Bank, where olive groves have been hit particularly hard by confrontations. During this year's harvest season, clashes between Israeli settlers and Palestinian farmers injured at least 23 farmers and damaged over 1,000 trees. One study using Palestinian data found that well over 500,000 olive trees have been uprooted by Israel since 1967. Still, Mohammed sees olives as a crop worth fighting for.
شجرة السون شجرة سلام مش استسلام ورفع اليدين. نحن ملتصقون في هذه الأرض. نحن آبائنا من قبلنا وأجدادنا وأبنائنا من بعدنا لن نتخلى عنها مهما واجهنا من الظروف.
Olives are deeply embedded not just in Palestinian culture, but in the economy too. The estimated 10 million olive trees that grow across the West Bank and Gaza make up nearly half the territory's agricultural land. And in the past year, Palestinians have found yet another use for olives: fuel. Gazan engineer Tamer Abu Matlik is turning olive mill waste into energy bricks, used for home heating and cooking.
أو ستي كانت تستخدمه في التدفئة عن طريق تشكيل كرات يتم استخدامها في فصل الشتاء. من هين بدأت الفكرة بتبعتنا إنه إحنا كيف ممكن نستفيد من هذا الكنز الأخضر، خاصة إنه نعاني نقص في الطاقة بسبب الحصار الإسرائيلي.
Since Israel and Egypt control the movement of goods and people in and out of Gaza, Palestinians often have to find innovative solutions using the resources they have.
احنا هنحل مشكلة بيئية وأيضا هنوفر مشكلة اقتصادية داخل قطاع غزة بسبب إنه موجود حصار غزة.
Camped out behind an olive mill, where mountains of waste pile up, Tamer and his team collect the olive byproduct and dump it into their improvised machine. The machine compresses the waste, cranking out over 2,000 pounds of bricks an hour. Then, the bricks dry in the sun before they're sold to Palestinians across Gaza. Tamer's product shows how the olive tree is the gift that keeps on giving food, fuel, and hope to many Palestinians.
احنا لا نعرف اليأس، ليش؟ لأنه الأرض تمثل لنا الانتماء والحياة، ولا الأرض لا تحيا إلا بشجرة الزيتون والأشجار المثمرة.
Sea bream dishes like this are a favourite here in Gaza. But catching the fish isn't always easy, despite the region bordering the Mediterranean Sea. Heavy restrictions imposed by Israel affect how far fishermen can go and what kind of fish they can catch, and many fear coming under fire while they're out at sea. One man has looked inland for answers and built his own fish farm in 2008. Fishing is a way of life for over 3,500 people living in this small Palestinian territory. But the ongoing naval blockade limits the area available for fishing, which can be up to 15 nautical miles from the coast, but is often much less than that. Straying too close to the fishing limits can mean arrest and the confiscation of boats and nets. The Israeli Navy has also been known to fire on boats, resulting in damage and casualties.
يعني احنا صيادين اعزلين، لا بنحمل سلاح ولا بنحمل حجر ولا بنحمل سكين، طالعين يعني نجلب قوت عيالنا وأسرنا.
This blockade was imposed because Gaza is governed by Hamas, which is seen as a terrorist organization by Israel and many Western countries. But it also impacts what fish the crews can catch. The closer to shore, the lower the quality and quantity of fish, and the lower the profits. That's why people like Hassan have looked for alternatives. He decided to open a fish farm at the height of the blockade in 2008, away from the fluctuating fortunes and dangers of the open sea.
والحمد لله بدينا من 80,000 ل 200,000 300,000 بذرة 400 لما وصلنا الآن 1.5 مليون، والسنة هذه إن شاء الله هنوصل 2 مليون.
The fish are incubated for 3 months before spending a year in large pools where they grow to maturity. Hassan produces 25 to 30 tons of fish a month, mainly sea bream. But he used to produce a third more. With 50% unemployment and high levels of poverty, demand in Gaza has its limits. He feels that if given open borders and access to an export market, he could grow.
مشان هوسع واستوعب عمال واستوعب ووسع المفرخ هذا مفرخ البذرة، ووسع الشغل ووسع الكهرباء واشغل عمال، الافات عمال. يا ريت واسوي علب مصنع تونه، اقسم بالله اسوي مصنع تونه واسوي مصنع علب. بس هات طريق وهات معابر وهات مطار وهات، ما فيش عندنا ولا حاجه.
For now, Hassan employs 70 people and manages to turn a profit, selling a kilogram of fish for about $5. Sea bream is a favourite in Gaza and is served in many of the local restaurants for those who can afford it. Back out at sea, these fishermen take in a catch of squid, sardines and sea bream at a distance of 9 nautical miles from shore. But it's one thing to catch and another to sell.
طبعا مأثر علينا زي ما انت شايف، هيك انت في قلب سوق سمك وحيدة في قطاع غزة، في زباين، في ناس تشتري السمك. طبعا فيش احنا بقينا طبعا قبل 15 سنة نبيع في اليوم من 400 ل 300 400 كيلو على مدار اليومي. اليوم للأسف بنبيعش 20 و30 كيلو، يلا نبيع 40 كيلو. تغير البيع، صار فيش بيع، صار في حصار، ان المواطن مش قادر ياكل، مش قادر يشتري المواطن. بطلنا نعرف نبيع، بطلنا نقدر نبيع. ايش بده نشتري؟ اول كان في بيع وكان في شراء، اليوم فيش بيع ولا في شراء.
These plastic fibers started as buckets pulled from the trash. Now they're used to make rugs as well as prayer mats. At the Hijazi straw mat factory in Gaza, working with plastic waste is the only option.
صراحة شغلنا حاليا كله صعب.
Iyad Hijazi used to import virgin plastic from Saudi Arabia, but since 2007, blockades have made it harder to get anything in or out of Gaza. Stocks of all kinds of important items are down, while trash is piling up. So people across the strip are finding all kinds of ways to run their businesses with materials recovered from landfills.
اليوم شبه صار عندنا اكتفاء ذاتي من المنتج نفسه.
So how do you deal with trash in a conflict zone? We went to the Gaza Strip to see how people make their living off worldwide waste. Donkey carts filled with plastic buckets pull up to this factory almost every day. Workers saw the buckets into pieces to fit into shredders. Washing machines remove any dirt and residue. Some excess water is drained, and the pieces are added to the dryer to spin out the rest. This type of plastic retains its strength after recycling, despite being incredibly lightweight. The plastic is poured into bags and sent upstairs using a lift. Next, plastic bits get loaded into the hopper, where they will be heated to their melting point. Adding dyes adjusts the color. Then the pliable sludge falls down to an extruder before being pushed out into long strands. Water cools the plastic until it solidifies. The strands get cut down back into a granule size and end up in these huge sacks. The granules are then sent back downstairs. They're heated up again before being poured into machines specially sized for the mat threads. This time, the machines cut the plastic threads to the perfect size for weaving. Workers bundle the filaments and walk them over to the weaving machines. The factory can produce up to 500 meters of mats every day, but that's way down compared to previous years. When Ayad's father opened it in 1986, the factory ran 24 hours a day with almost 30 employees. Now, there's only one shift a day, and conflict often dictates work schedules. Israeli airstrikes damaged the factory multiple times, most recently in May 2023. Iyad still hasn't been able to rebuild.
يعني هنا ضررنا الثلث هذا كله راح. هاي محل القصف على طول المصنع، والبلوك هذا كله كان زي كده مستة بطون، كله هذا اتدمر الحمد لله. وهنا كمان منجا راحت، يعني احنا حظنا الحمد لله أحسن من غيرنا.
Many of the materials needed to rebuild the factory are hard to find or too expensive, like cement, which was largely banned until 2021.
طبعاً في الماكينة هذه خلص نزلت عن الخدمة بشكل كامل. طبعاً هاي فيها كمان ماكينة بس مش واضحة.
The factory keeps running despite the challenges of operating in a conflict zone.
بنشتغل احنا 8 ساعات في المصنع، بكون مع العمال شغالين عند من الساعة 6 للساعة 2.
In Gaza, electricity is unreliable, running only 14 hours a day on average.
هذا مسبب لنا مشكلة، لأنه أنا عندي مكن عشان يسخن ويبدأ يشتغل بيحتاج لساعتين تسخين.
Power in Gaza mainly comes from two sources: an old diesel-powered plant that only meets about 1/5 of electricity demand, and power lines from Israel. But diesel is expensive, and there's little place to store large amounts. The Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated parts of the world. It's been an occupied territory since 1967. In 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza. Israel, the United States, and the European Union label it a terrorist organization. Since then, Israel has restricted the movement of people and goods in and out of the 25-mile strip of land. The blockade cut off materials that could be used to manufacture weapons and for other military purposes, according to the Israeli government.
We cannot allow materials that can be used for weapons that would be used against us to cross the border.
But the list also included a lot of basic items needed to repair infrastructure. Over time, supplies of building materials, fuel for cars and power plants, parts to fix broken machinery, and even some medical equipment have periodically run out. And the garbage heaps kept getting bigger and bigger.
ضيق علينا سبل الحياة وبمنعنا من ممارسات حياتنا.
Mohammed Sabri Musla, a director at the Water and Environment Quality Authority in Gaza, says the territory produces over 2,000 metric tons of solid waste per day. Gaza's recycling centers can't handle all of it, and the blockade often prevents waste from being shipped to other countries for processing. So, a lot of garbage ends up in the Strip's two official landfills, where it's regularly burned. But because the landfills lack proper firefighting equipment, large fires can burn for days. This one in March 2023 took more than 3 days to control, and Gaza called for international aid to help put it out. There's so much trash that illegal dump sites sometimes become the only option.
في المكبات العشوائية بتم دفنها بطريقة غير صحية وبتكون هذه الطريقة خطرة على الصحة وعلى البيئة.
Since the start of the blockades, unemployment has hovered around 45% in Gaza, and the illegal dump sites have become a source of income for trash pickers, who sometimes burn electronic waste to salvage copper and other metals. That creates clouds of toxic smoke linked to increased cancer rates and respiratory problems for Gaza's children. Even though most Gazans suffer from the waste problems, those trash piles have become a resource. In 2019, one man began recycling paper waste, turning it into trays for transporting eggs.
شوف احنا اليوم نعمل إعادة تدوير لمادة كانت بتروح للمزابل ما حدش بيستفيد منها، نعمل تدوير منها بننتج مادة في احتياجها المزارع.
Akram spent 2 years perfecting the recipe. Workers first rip the trash paper and mix it with water. The proper ratio produces a moldable, thick slurry. Molds press the slurry into the proper shape, squeezing out the extra water. Then they dry in the harsh Mediterranean sun. Now Akram employs 7 people to make the trays.
المنتج تاعنا اليوم احنا بنخدم البيئة وبنخدم المجتمع، بنخدم البلديات نفسهم الحكم المحلي. اليوم المنتج هذا انا لو ما شلتهمش الاطنان هذه من ورق ومن كرتون حينضطر يشيلهم الحكم المحلي او البلدية نفسها، كويس؟
Unlike the raw materials needed over at the mat factory, egg cartons remained off the list of banned imports. But local farmers prefer the recycled cartons.
المستورد ضعيفة جدا. أما العادة هذا اللي عندنا جامدة بكسرش البيض.
And every egg is precious. More than 60% of people in Gaza are food insecure. Isolated from the rest of the world, Gaza has been called the world's largest open-air prison. But it has about 25 miles of Mediterranean coastline.
البحر هو المتنفس الوحيد إلنا في مدينة غزة، بنروح وإحنا زعلانين وإحنا مبسوطين على البحر.
Ali Mahanna worked with an artist collective to build the Sea is Ours cafe. Planters made from old tires line the path to the entrance. One of the doors came from a refrigerator.
هلا يصير الموضوع إنه إحنا بنحط هاي الشغلات، بنقول أوكي أهم بدنا باب،
ما بنروحش على الخيار التقليدي إنه يلا نعمل باب زي الباب اللي إحنا بنعرفه، بندور على إشي ممكن نستخدمه كباب.
And windows? From an old washing machine. Inside, the artists run a community center that teaches locals how to reuse everything.
هاي الشغلات بتشجع إنه والله ممكن إحنا هاي الأشياء نغير نظرتنا إنها إنه هي نفايات بس اللي ممكن يتم الاستفادة منها.
The cafe allows customers to donate waste from their homes in lieu of cash.
كاس في إطارات سيارات، يعني كمان تحت بند نفايات صلبة، يعني أشياء ما بيحتاجوها بترتمى، غالبيتها من البلاستيك، خشب، قماش، كراسي مكسرة، خزانات، أشياء من هذا النوع.
Despite the war around them, the artists cobbled together a mini oasis by the ocean, spending their days working on community art projects.
يحيى إضافة خطيرة إنها بالتعاونية، عنده أفكار كتير بفاجئنا فيها إنه كيف ممكن نستخدم الأشياء اللي هو راح أول جزء منها لهدايا وتحف اللي يكون كمان هذا نوع من مصدر الدخل إله.
The cafe and community space provide a modest income for the half a dozen people who work here. And while today seems like a peaceful evening, there are always reminders of the effects of war.
كان من البيوت اللي صار فيها هدم جزئي اللي بيتم إزالتها لإعادة الترميم.
Ali is in talks with the Gaza government to open more community centers, especially for children.
وبالتالي كمان بنمرر له نوع من القيمة اللي احنا حابين نحكي له إياها. دائما بيحكوا الحاجة أم الاختراع.
The conflict has forced Ali and Iyad, as well as many other Palestinians, to become unlikely recyclers, making the best out of a dire situation.
لا أنا مش بقدرش أعدل يعني لا على حكومة ولا على غيره في طريقة التعامل مع النفايات الصلبة، بس هي حل من الحلول عشان الواحد يحافظ على البيئة بشكل عام.
This wooden loom carefully wraps a single piece of yarn about 400 times. The yarn is the colorful foundation for carpets like these, the products of an ancient traditional process in Gaza. And at 74 years old, Mahmoud Hosni Mahmoud al-Sawwa is the last rug handweaver of his kind in this region.
المهنة هي حياتنا يعني.
But it might not be for long. In this episode, we take a look at how the long history of loom weaving could soon cease to exist in the region. It takes almost 8 hours to make about one 13 by 4 foot carpet, a process that, according to Sawaf, cannot be machine-made. He says he hopes his sons will continue this tradition, one that's lasted more than 5,000 years.
شخصياً أنا لا أبالغ يعني فوق 60 سنة وأنا بتعامل مع هذه المهنة. بينما والدي جدي سبقوني طبعاً في العمل.
It's a craft that requires skill, accuracy, focus, and dedication, but barely makes a profit. One handmade carpet sells for as low as 60 shekels, or $17. Half of Sawaf's monthly proceeds go towards paying his employees and buying raw materials. But it wasn't always this way. The textile and dressmaking industry used to be one of the strongest sectors in Gaza. At its peak around 2005, it was estimated to bring in $39 million annually. A decade later, Gaza's textile industry brings in just a fraction of that.
يعني الوضع الاقتصادي تبع أو المردود المادي للصناعة أصبحت يعني ضعيفة جدا.
Even sourcing raw material is difficult since Israel enforced its blockade on Gaza. Israel restricts the flow of goods in and out of Gaza Strip due to the ongoing conflict and cross-border violence. Now, this once thriving Palestinian textile industry has lost nearly 60% of its sales and over 3/4 of its waged workers.
لكن سابقا كان يمكن ما يعادل 500 نول في قطاع غزة. في الوقت الحالي يمكن لا أبالغ يمكن عشرات بس النوال.
The industry is also taking a hit from other countries that sell carpets at lower prices. A meter of carpet imported from abroad could run about 30 shekels, about 3 shekels less than the carpets made in Gaza.
يمكن خلال السنوات الأخيرة كان هناك ازدياد ملحوظ تمام في استيراد كميات كبيرة من السجاد الموكيت لأنه إحنا إذا بدنا نحكي عن السجاد اليدوي، إحنا بنعرف إنه الصناعات اليدوية تكلفتها عالية جدا، واليوم مع قلة الدخل في قطاع غزة الناس بتتجه للمنتج الأرخص.
In spite of this, Al-Sawaf hopes these traditional woven carpets will one day regain the prestige of their past.
والله إن شاء الله نتمنى إنها تكون يعني في مستقبلها تكون إلها إقبال، لأنه بدأ الناس يعني فعلا يرجعوا للتراث القديم أو البساط القديم، لأنه إنه البساط يعني لا أبالغ من 30-40 سنة ممكن يخدم.
And with that, his family legacy has a chance of survival.
إن شاء الله بنضلنا محافظين عليها.
When an Israeli airstrike destroyed the high-rise that housed the Associated Press and Al Jazeera, residents were watching from down the street.
المكان البني هذا صار نازله تحتيه هذا البيت تبعها الطابق السابعه.
Jawad Mehdi owned the tower in Gaza and lived there.
امبارح لما طلعت فوق انا شفت بعض الحاجيات، الملابس، السرير تبعي، الشرشف تبع الشرشف تبع البيت كله، يعني عرفت المكان هذا.
On May 15th, an Israeli intelligence officer called Mehdi and gave him about 1 hour to evacuate.
وين العداله؟ وين المنطق؟ وين القانون الدولي؟
Everyone inside the building scrambled to get out in time.
أنا نفسي جوازي ما عرفت أجيبه، هويتي ما عرفت أجيبها، يعني ما أخذتش اللباس اللي لابسه، أنا بس فقط لا غير.
25 years of memories.
في البداية هذه الولد عندي فيها 15 حفيد. البنات الصغار اللي عمرهم 5 سنين بيقول أنا بدي وعية، بدي ألعب.
This was one of the last videos Mehdi made inside the building, his family waiting to evacuate.
إنه إحنا شعب لنا حق، إحنا ما إجينا لا من مكان بعيد ولا من كوكب آخر، إحنا عشنا على هذه الأرض وبدنا نضلنا عايشين عليها.
Mehdi owns 5 clothing stores in Gaza. He lost about $145,000 worth of clothes.
وهاي الملابس هذه اللي إحنا بنشتغل فيها، يعني مش ملابس معدة لناس مقاتلين ولا ناس بدهم يحاربوا إسرائيل، هذه ناس بدهم يعيشوا على البحر ويتفسحوا، وهي شعب غزة بحب الحياة.
And he's lost even more income from the homes and offices that the building once held.
والمكاتب كانوا 50 مكتب، كل مكتب يعني في 30 ومن 30 ل 50، لأنه في مكاتب صغيرة ومكاتب كبيرة، طبعا فيهم كلهم عاملين زي ما حكينا، صحافة، مهندسين، محامين، رجال أعمال، مختبرات طبية.
Israeli Defense Forces told Insider that members of Hamas's research and development unit lived in the building and operated, quote, technological equipment against Israel. IDF did not provide any evidence to back those claims.
عندنا إرهاب ولا عندنا صواريخ ولا عندنا أي شيء. الصواريخ تنحط معقول؟ يعني في واحد مجنون، واحد عاقل بفكر انه هذه عباره بيطلقوا من الصواريخ المقاتلين؟ وين احنا في قرون الغاب؟ يعني شيء عقلاني، شيء معقول يعني. كل ما بتحاول له اللي هو تفكير، وانت بني ادم ما بتبقاش قيمه بالنسبه لهم. هي اهداف او كانت مش اهداف بيضربوها، يعني حتى ترويع المواطن والمواطنة والطفل، حتى إحنا نكره اللي هو المقاتل ونصير نقول هو السبب.
Now, as he walks around his old neighborhood with his son, they remember better times.
هذا بياع حلويات، هذا سوبر ماركت، هذا كافي، يعني حياة طبيعية عندنا، ما فيش يعني لا عسكر ولا حياتنا هنا، بيوتنا هنا، عملنا هنا، فرحنا مرحنا كله هنا، سعادتنا كلها هنا. بدك تطلع هاي مفتاح، ايش بده واحد احلى من هيك شغله؟ احلى مربع في المنطقه ولا احلى مربع في البلد.
On October 10th, 2023, Yasser Abu Wazna fled his home fearing Israeli airstrikes. He went back the next day to recover what he could.
This is the place where I used to live, and where I have to maintain and fix and do many things, and repeat many beginnings. This is my place. This is my house. This is my house. This is my house. This is where all the memories. We built it stone by stone, rocket by rocket, brick by brick. Even the language we use is destroyed. Everything is destroyed. This is something insane. It's insane. This is my apartment. Upstairs is my apartment. Upstairs. Look at this. This is my office. This is my office. This is where all my work is done. Look at this. My tripods. My lighters. Look at this. 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 This is my office. This is my office. This is my office. This is where I used to edit my pieces. I've moved my box, and I hope it still works. My last documentary movie, which was officially selected recently, is still there in the office. Look at this. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is the poster of my. This is the poster. This is the poster of my film. All my notes. My box. My box. My box. My box. It's crazy. It's insane. It's insane. And this is my rod mine. This is my rod mine. My lenses. What remains from my equipment. Look. My box. It's insane. Look there. Look there. Look there. They are all civilians. They're all normal civilians. This is my fish tank. My favorite fish tank. My children used to feed them every morning. Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is insane. This is insane. This is my tripods. I don't know what to do, from where to start, from when to end. I'm trying just to collect what I can collect. This once was the door of my apartment. Look at this. My next box. My bookshelves. Look at this. 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 This is my living room. This is my living room. Oh, we're still hearing airstrikes. This used to be for Ibrahim. It's Ibrahim's room. It's Ibrahim's room. This is Our feeding room. Our feeding room. Look at this. Look at this. Bathroom. Hala's room. Hala's room. Oh, Hala. I can't imagine how can I tell her what happened to her room. This is Hala's room. She likes podcasting and she was starting to learn podcasting. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This is me. This is me in this mirror. It's the first time for this mirror to see me in this stage, in this. This is the kitchen. This is the kitchen. This is the kitchen. Look at this. It's open now to the streets. Oh, I lose my words. I literally lose my words. This is Ahmed's and Mahmoud's. This is Ahmed and Mahmoud's room. This is my sleeping room. Oh, Dahlia. Oh. Look at this. It's insane. Insane. Literally insane. Look at this. Look at this. How people used to pick their gods from under the rubble. Look at this. Oh. Our neighbor was killed during the bombing. Allah bless him. Look at this.
Yasser evacuated to southern Gaza and has been moving from shelter to shelter with his wife and 4 children.
People thought that it should be the safest place.
We've reached out to all the businesses featured on this video and haven't heard back from anyone yet.